not, Donald Trump is entertaining running for a third term. Now, I know what you may be thinking, that that's impossible. No way in hell that can happen. But actually, it appears there is a loophole and this could actually happen. And I want to brace you and prepare you for this. I personally don't think he's going to do this, but it is something I think people need to know about the 22nd Amendment and about the 12th Amendment. Now, here's where this comes from. I don't know if you guys saw this. Crazy times we're living in. Trump said he was not joking about the possibility of a third term. Check this out.
President Trump is now floating the idea of running for a third term in some of his strongest comments yet. The president reportedly told Meet the Press anchor Kristen Welker that he wasn't joking when asked about the possibility, and he said that there were ways around the constitutional term limits on the presidency. President Trump is also threatening tariffs on Russia over Vladimir Putin's recent comments about President Zelensky. Here's ABC's senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott.
Tonight, President Trump reportedly says he's considering ways to serve a third term, a move that would require breaching the two-term limit outlined in the Constitution. The president telling NBC's Kristen Welker, quote, "There are methods which you could do it," when asked to clarify, saying, "I'm not joking," later adding, "It's far too early to think about it." But the president and his allies have been floating the idea for months.
I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again?
Amending the Constitution for Trump to run a third term would be extremely difficult, first requiring 2/3 approval by Congress and then ratification by 38 states. With the president now just days away from imposing tariffs on foreign cars and auto parts, Trump now threatening even more on Russian oil. The president delivering his harshest criticism yet of Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he's, quote, very angry with him for attacking the credibility of Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. Putin on Friday claiming Zelensky lacks the legitimacy to sign a peace deal. Trump himself has criticized the Ukrainian president, falsely calling him a dictator.
He refuses to have elections, is low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished?
But now Trump is changing his tune. The president reportedly saying, if a peace deal isn't made, and if I think it was Russia's fault, I'm going to put secondary sanctions on Russia.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of trolling that's happening with Donald Trump. It's kind of like a lot of these threats. Now, not all of it. Some of these things I do think he's serious about, like, right? Like, we're going to get into the Gaza stuff a little bit later on Thursday about the new plan, about what's happening with that, what Israel is actively doing. But the third term, I personally don't think he's going to try to do that. But some people want him to do that. And I think that may have been why he said it. But for the purpose of this conversation, the reason why I wanted to cover this story is because I do want you to know that this is possible. And I think we really need to dive into this. What does the 22nd Amendment say? And what does the 12th Amendment say? So let's take that journey. Let's dive on in there. I also don't think Trump would win again in 2028. I really don't think that he would. Even some of the people, it's interesting, man. I got friends of all different types, right? I got friends from all different political ideologies. Even some of the people that I know that voted for Donald Trump are not happy with him right now. Right now, these are people that are not like MAGA Trumper supporters per se. They're just people that are Republican and they vote Republican. They just back their party, just like people who may not have been happy with Kamala Harris, but they're Democrats. So they just vote for the Democrat candidate, like they're backing their party, that type of thing. But some of the people I know that voted for him have reached out to me. They reached out to me and they said, can I just vent? I'm like, go for it. And they've been venting about how frustrated they are and etc. And I could have easily said, I told you so. But I was like, that's probably not the best thing to say at that moment. And I'll say this to everybody else, too. For the people who are like, oh, you guys who decided to support Jill Stein, first of all, learn how to do math. Because math shows that Jill Stein's votes added to Kamala's votes still shows that Kamala loses. In fact, the math shows that every third party and independent candidate, if you take her votes and give them to Kamala Harris still loses. So when you come to people and you say things like, I told you guys, so I told you so, that's why you should have voted this way, that really does not help you win. It sure as hell don't change my mind. It actually makes me kind of angry with you. So that type of thing. But yeah, people have contacted me and they've been kind of venting. People who I know who voted for Kamala have also reached out to me and they're venting and they're so pissed that Kamala couldn't make this work. They're so pissed that the Democrats were that bad that they couldn't beat him again. So these are things that people have said to me behind the scenes that they're not willing to say publicly. And there's a lot of that going around. We can talk about that on call-in when we get into that. But this is how it could actually happen. And I want people to understand, again, what does the 22nd Amendment say and what does the 12th Amendment say? Let's get into that here.
President Trump's second term has barely started, and he's already floating the possibility of a third one, even though the U.S. Constitution forbids it. Trump telling NBC News this weekend, quote, there are methods by which he could do it, and that he's, quote, not joking. Here's how South Carolina Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn is responding to it.
Well, I don't think he's joking at all. This man does not plan to leave this White House. All of this is about suspending, if not eliminating, the Constitution of the United States. And that's the track we're on. And I think people better get serious about this. When he says he's not joking about throwing away the Constitution, which is what he'll have to do in order to have a third term, and we are not going to rise up in opposition to that, I think it's time for us all to wake up.
We're joined now by CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. And Ellie, the 22nd Amendment is very clear. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice.
Pause. First of all, of course, they would have to get Clyburn on here, right? Of course, Jim Clyburn would show up. Why not, right? Read this, folks. 22nd Amendment of the Constitution. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Keyword elected. And no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected, president shall be elected to the office of the president more than once. But listen to the loophole. Check this out.
Where is this wiggle room that Trump is seeing?
Well, Bree, you're exactly right. Lawyers love wiggle room and escape hatches. And here they're looking at the word elected. So here's the argument. It's fringy, but the 22nd Amendment says nobody should be elected president more than twice. Well, the theory is, well, then maybe what Donald Trump or any two-term president can do is run as vice president with, let's say, J.D. Vance at the top of the ticket. If they win, J.D. Vance resigns, Donald Trump becomes president. The argument is that, well, that wouldn't be getting elected. That would be becoming president through the line of succession, ascending to the presidency. So now the biggest problem with this, of course, though, is earlier in the Constitution. The 12th Amendment tells us that any person who's ineligible to be president is also ineligible to be vice president. So you would think that ends the question. That seems pretty straightforward. There is a very fringy, extreme school of thought that the 12th Amendment doesn't quite close the door on this, but I think those advocates are trying to thread a needle that is not threadable.
A little too cute by half there.
So basically, they're trying to work around the wording of the 22nd Amendment and the 12th Amendment, right? But they're also, if you look at the 12th Amendment, it also says that you can't run as VP either. But if he were to find some way to kind of change that, then yeah, that could, that could greatly change things. I don't think that's going to happen. I think a federal judge would come and strike that down, just like federal judges have stricken down like other things that Trump has tried to implement. But I think it's a big troll. How old is Donald Trump right now at this point? Like, I think people, it's time for a younger generation. I really do. And I don't mean like young, but I think it's time for to move on towards like a new leadership, a new something. No more Bushes, no more Clintons, no more Trumps, no more Obama. Like, I don't want no dynasties, no Pelosi, no more Pelosi family, no Obama family, none of that. I think we just need like new, fresh energy. And by the way, no Pelosi family, that includes Gavin Newsom as well, because he's still related to her by marriage. So I mean extended family too, okay? I think you just need new like energy and new, something just fresh, something new. But no, I don't think that Donald Trump will run for president again. It's 2025. That would be 2028. I mean, come on. It's like the same people, like people still saying like they want Bernie to run. I'm like, Bernie's 83 years old. Like, come on, man. Let's stop with the mess.
Trump said in addition to the J.D. Vance option, there are others too. That's a quote. What are they?
Well, the most straightforward option, it's completely unrealistic, but we can always amend the Constitution. I mean, we have done that 27 times in our history. It's virtually impossible in today's political landscape. In order to amend the Constitution, there's two ways to do it. One, we can convene a series of statewide constitutional conventions. That's never happened. That's not going to happen. Two, maybe equally as unlikely, you would have to get a 2/3 vote in the House of Representatives, a 2/3 vote in the U.S. Senate, and then 3/4 of the states, 38 of the 50 states would have to ratify that. So in theory, you could do that, but there's a 0.00% chance of that happening in reality.
And I mean, just talk about why this is an important tradition that has been codified in the Constitution. This is something that makes America quite extraordinary.
Well, and that's exactly why I think these end runs, playing with the word elected or trying to argue the 12th Amendment doesn't apply somehow. That's why I think they're disingenuous and dangerous. Part of what we have to do when we look at the Constitution is look at the spirit, look at the intent. I mean, George Washington stepped down after 2 terms because he understood we don't want a king. The reason we ratified the 22nd Amendment in 1951 after FDR had served 4 consecutive terms is we didn't want that. So you're right. I think norms are really important here, and that's part of what's different. Look, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama both served 2 terms. Neither of them, and so did George W. Bush, none of them ever in any serious way spoke about, considered, gave any life to the possibility of a 3rd term. And Donald Trump's doing it differently.
Let me interject here for just a moment, if that's okay. I was just thinking about what he said about, these amending the Constitution and all these different things. And I think what I said before, the thing that really frustrates me the most about Trump's presidency is that whether we agree with what he has chosen to do with his power, he has shown us what the president can get done. And then you look back at how little Biden was willing to do, how little Obama was willing to do, how little Bill Clinton was willing to do for the working class. Well, Bill Clinton did increase the minimum wage, but still, you look back at it and you're just like, man, like why they could have done more, but they didn't want to. And that's how you end up here. So who's to blame for this? Who's to blame for the fact that Trump can even troll about it? Yeah, maybe I can run for a 3rd term. Like, who's to blame for that? You know how you get in this position? When the so-called opposition to the current party that's in power isn't really opposition. When the so-called opposition to the current party in power isn't really so-called opposition. Because you see, when Kamala Harris decides to get along with Liz Cheney, when Joe Biden implements genocide, when Kamala doesn't break from Biden on at least that issue, when you go along with what the neocons want, when you're not willing to have an agenda that is a populist message for the working class people, you're not really in opposition. Difference is you might be better on some social issues, but economically, you're not really in opposition anymore. You're not even in opposition when it comes to war. That's how you get here. That's how you even get. That's what I'm saying. It makes no sense to me. Donald Trump shouldn't even won again. The fact that he lost in 2020, How you come back and win again? Unless the other administration was that bad. It's an embarrassment. And although you see AOC and Bernie Sanders out there right now fighting like that, doing that oligarchy fight tour or whatever, why is it just two people? And Ro Khanna's holding like town halls or whatever. And I told you guys before, this is to funnel things back into the Democratic Party, even though Bernie said like people should also run as independent. The donation links to Act Blue. You look it up, you go to donate, it's Act Blue. It's going back to the Democratic Party. But the thing is, why is it just those people? There's no real opposition. And that's how someone like Donald Trump can even entertain it. That's how someone like Donald Trump can say, hey, maybe I might run a third term. Oh, actually, we can do this and we can do that. That's how he gets to that point. Because the Democratic Party, they weren't fighters. They were too busy trying to figure out how to get along with the Republicans instead of fighting against. I mean, if we were boxing and we were in a ring right now, basically the Democratic Party got knocked the fuck out. That's how you get there. It's crazy. Crazy when you think about it. Crazy stuff. But I think he's trolling. I don't think he's going to run a third term, but I wanted you to see that there is possible loopholes where he could. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.